So we're going to have a go at the cylinder today. Looking at the stock supplied, I don't see any draft angles on there, so I'm assuming it wasn't cast. I'm assuming it was extruded as a long piece, and then looks like it was just cut off on both ends. The only dimensions they provide on the plan for this part, size wise, is the overall length and the distance from the centre of the bore to the flat face. So I think I'll use this flat part here as an initial reference surface and try and true up the ends a little, and then decide where to go from there. So I have the piece clamped in the vise, a couple of parallels, and I've tapped down the piece onto those. So I'm just going to trim off the end there, and then I'll turn it around and I'll do the same for the other end, and then I'll use those two flat surfaces as reference surfaces, which is about as accurate as I can think of how to do this. There's probably a better way, but they should be close enough. So I cleaned up both of the ends, and I've marked this off and been doing some calculations, and the distance between the top and the bottom that I calculated it needed to be is the exact size that it is, which is no good because I think this has to be a perfectly flat surface to get a good surface on the main body. So I'm going to set this up in the milling machine and just take a very, very thin slice off that, just to clean it up best I can, taking off as minimum as possible. Okay, so I set this up in the, it's not even focused, I don't know. So I set this up in the vise, and I've set that on 0 on the indicator. So we'll just move across from the rear back right corner to the front. We're 1 increment off there, and this is a 0.001 of a millimeter increment gauge. Move on to the other end. So we've got about 3 increments of variation across that. Based on the corners, that is. And it's because it's when you go into the middle, you can see the needle varies, and that's because it's not a flat, completely flat surface, because it's not been machined. So I think that's about close enough for what I need. So now it's just a case of taking a light skim across the top of that to make it as flat as possible. Okay, so after I've machined surface. Just set up the indicator again just to get an idea of how that looks. So other than the bumpy surface, whenever I stop moving, it seems to be pretty much on the one increment there. Okay, so what I've done is I've polished this surface to get as many tool marks out as possible, and while I've got it in this setup, I'm going to drill the hole for the rod that mounts this cylinder to the main body, just so it's 90 degrees to this surface as much as possible, because that's going to be critical to get a good seal between the two. I've measured the height of this piece, and it's obviously now less than what it is on the plans. I've done some calculations to where the bore is going to be and the depth of this hole, just to make sure that they're not going to encroach on each other, and it's close. It's about 1.5 millimeters off, so hopefully that won't break through, but if it does, we'll deal with that when we get to it. So I've drilled and tapped that, and I've done it to a depth it says on the plans, and any further it might intersect with the bore, which we don't want. So I can only assume that the thread on this part is over length, so I think I'm going to trim that down to try and reduce some of that wobble. Okay, so I've got the piece mounted in the vise using the back flat surface as a reference against the solid jaw of the vise. I measured the width and found the center point, and then worked out how far that was in from the outside, and did the same from this side into the center, and that's where I'm gonna drill and ream the hole for the bore of the cylinder, and hopefully with those measurements it'll be central within the curve, because we've got an end cap that's going to have to be made for each end, and we want that to fit in nicely and locate centrally within that. So within my calculations, that's about as close as I can get that. A little bit of guesswork in there as well, I guess, but we shall see. So anyway, I'm going to draw this up in sizes and ream it. Let's do it. So I've measured the length of the cylinder and worked out how much I need to take off. So I'm going to take half off this end because the mounting point for the cylinder has already been drilled and is already central to the part, so I have to take the same amount off each end to keep that as a central feature. I haven't moved the part, so I'm going to cut this side down to length, which ensures that this face is going to be at 90 degrees to that bore. And then I'll mark this end and make sure that that will be the bottom of the cylinder, because it'll be more accurate for the piston rods to come out of. And then on the other end, when I flip it over, I'll take off the same amount, and that'll just be the top cap, which is less critical, I reckon. So I'm going to proceed taking fairly light cuts because I don't want this to shift in the vice jaws, so I don't want to put too much pressure on it. So I've trimmed one end to length, and now I've got to do this end. You notice that the bore didn't come through because I knew that this was waste material, and I didn't want to drill all the way through into my parallels, so I left it the drill hole slightly short so that it was long enough to protrude once this is taken off, but not long enough to go through and damage the parallels. So when the piece was flat in the vise, I spot drilled where I need to drill the ports through, and then I've just set it up at the appropriate angle, and now I'm going to drill the ports through into the cylinder. I didn't have anything the right degree, so I just milled something from a scrap piece of brass to get the correct angle. So how do we do? I think it turned out okay. Nice flat surface there. Ports and the mount is in the correct place. The ports came through right near the end of the cylinder. Looks fairly even on both sides, so that measurement went okay. Visually, the surface of the inside bore looks okay. I know some people have methods to make that smoother, but we'll see how it runs, I guess, and play with that in a fitment stage if you have any issues. Visually, the bore seems to be a similar distance away from the bolt holes. On both ends, so that's fairly straight through there. other than cleaning up some burrs and then drilling the mounting holes here. And that's done. The holes are for securing on the lagging, which I think I'll do. I'll draw those when I drill the hole in the lagging and fit it, to make sure it lines up rather than go off the drawing at the moment. So there you go.